Hello and welcome back. This is Tora and Agatha, and you're listening to Outvice Insights, a podcast by freelance talent marketplace Outvice. Here we discuss trending topics within business, technology, and the future of work. Today we're speaking with Shabkhez Mahmood, Outvice partner in the MENA region, on the topic, the telecom world in the Middle East, more than just a commercial deal. Thanks for joining us. So we have Shabkhez with us. How are you doing?
How are you doing today?
Thank you so much. All good. How about you? All good?
All good. And where are you currently located? Is it Bahrain, or are you actually in Saudi right now?
No, I'm speaking from Bahrain, where it is 41 degrees at the moment. It feels like maybe 51 degrees or more. So the weather has been pretty hot over here. I think I can't complain as much as I could previously because I know how it is in Europe. So how is it there?
Yeah, we know what you're feeling. Yeah. Now we are sitting in the studio. It's so nice.
Yeah. Okay.
It's really nice. Yeah. This is your first time with podcasting? To recording?
I've done recordings before, but not sure if I've done a remote podcast before. So this is my first experience.
Yeah, this is.
Okay.
I think this is new to all of us.
This is
Yeah. So look, hopefully we'll come out sounding decently fine. So.
I'm sorry, Shabkhez. I would like to a little bit know about you, actually. What are you doing? Who you are?
Right. So I am a serial consultant for the last 18 odd years. I worked for Big Fours most of my life. So PwC to start with, and then 17 years with EY, as well as with the telecom and media and technology industry in between, as well as a consultant. So that's what I've done most of my 20-something years. I'll not specify the exact number. That gives away too much. But so I've worked across Europe, across Asia, across Middle East now for the last 10 years, working primarily with telecom operators, but also with technology partners, technology players, and other sectors as well as part of my life with Ernst & Young.
Wow, you have a lot of experience, a lot of international. That's great. It means
Absolutely.
We find perfect expert to talk today.
It's a very interesting place to be in because the Middle East, particularly the GCC, it seems to benefit from experiences from across the globe because it's almost like a central geographically as well. So we see it as the crossroads for the Asia Pac and Europe and the Americas, etc. So you'd see all the different experiences come together in the Middle East. So it's a great place to be.
Okay, yeah, cool. So can you tell us a bit about the state of the telecom industry in the Middle East then?
Sure. So the telecom sector, and before I go into that, I would just like to little bit talk about the region as a whole, right? So the region, of course, is quite big when you talk about the Middle East, and then more specifically, the Gulf region is the 6 countries, including Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar, and Oman. So the region has seen quite a lot of change over the last decade, right? So it has seen, number one, it was very oil dependent. So it's seen a lot of diversification in recent years. So countries are trying to sort of reduce their dependency on oil and get into other sectors, other industry in a big way. Secondly, obviously with the oil prices coming down, it is no longer a choice, but it is a need. So that has further accelerated as well. Then when the pandemic struck, of course, globally, all sectors, all industries, all countries were affected in one way or the other, obviously not in a positive way. But in the GCC, of course, it was a little bit of a double whammy because the oil prices were down and the pandemic impacts were there. So it affected all industries, right? The telco industry in particular had to bear the brunt of onslaught it was seeing from other digital players over the last few years, the last decade, and then having to support the needs of the consumer in a bigger way, right? So more connectivity needs, more let's say, different distribution models, different response, etc. required. So that was kind of a very difficult time, I would say, for most of the players in the region. But they have really done well. Despite the softening of many different revenues and many metrics. They responded well by getting into adjacencies and looking at innovative ways of responding to the situation. So I would say overall they have done well. But the pressure is still there. Pressure continues. They are still competing with wider digital plays, etc. And they have responded to it by adopting various different strategies, from becoming more of ecosystem plays, and in some cases, if not, the ability is not there, by responding with more sort of optimization sort of measures.
Yeah, because like for me, I don't know what about you, Tora, but when I'm thinking about Middle East, as you said, it's like oil. I was never were into it like telecom in Middle East, right? But in the global terms, I think it's changed, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So the Middle East always, let's say, had the infrastructure for the last few decades, right? But it was more state-controlled infrastructure.
Yeah.
But in the last couple of decades, that has changed. So most of the telco operators here, they are definitely state-backed through sovereign wealth funds, etc. But then they're also listed, and they've got top-end management and working as a pure commercial enterprise.
Yeah, I have actually a question. I don't know if it will be related for this conversation, but compared to Europe or let's say even US, America, how the telecom stayed in Middle East? How big is that?
So I would say that if you look at things like, how diversified they have been able to become to respond to the digital disruption, if you like, I would say they are lagging a little bit behind their European counterparts and their North American counterparts. So Strategy Ant came up with an interesting index, which is called Digital Economy Index, DEI. So the GCC region is seen more as a digital adopter compared to some of the North Americans, for example, being seen as, and Europeans being seen as digital disruptors. But they're catching up. So in terms of the amount of change which has happened over the last few years, the GCC has seen the biggest amounts of change, positive change, in terms of how much of digital economy has grown, right? And the telecom plays, which are also some of the strongest brands in the region, not the largest, but the strongest brand in the region, but because obviously they're moving from oil to non-oil. So if you take away the oil brands like Aramco and ADNOC, then you'll find that the telcos are not just the strongest, but also the most valuable brands in the region. For example, STC, Saudi Telecom, or Etisalat, which is rebranded now as EAND. So they are there right at the top, right? So what comes with that is also a lot of expectations and a lot of, let's say, opportunity. So traditionally, there hasn't been large technology enterprise which have been natively focused on the region. So most of the telco players have actually also had that advantage that they have worked with international technology partners, etc., to do a lot of things over the last few years. However, now many of the technology players are also setting up their own sort of, let's say, offices and operations within the region, and that is obviously direct competition to the telecoms in many of the things that they're trying to do.
Yeah, just like if we're not speaking about financials, what are the other growth drivers and factors in the Middle East?
So apart from the financials, we need to think about how the telecom players are actually positioned within each of the countries. So as I mentioned, historically they were state-owned. They are still backed by sovereign wealth funds. So there is an expectation from the state about them participating in some of the strategic, let's say, growth drivers and strategic vision elements of the state, right? So that, which is of course good for business, but also sometimes the timing is not exactly what the business would do on its own, right? So that is one let's say, element which needs to be considered. Secondly, there has been a lot of change in regulatory landscape. So there are still some of the GCC countries where the telecoms here enjoy a little bit more protection compared to their counterparts in Europe. For example, OTT players are not able to operate as freely in the UAE. Like, maybe you also know that Skype calling or WhatsApp calling, etc., is not allowed in all of the countries here, which of course gives some level of protection, right? But on the other hand, regulation is changing and easing, so people are now able to use many of the video conferencing services, etc., which also means that, like their peers globally, the telecoms continue to invest in a lot of capacity, but they're not able to recoup their investments as profitably as they would like to, while facilitating others like hyperscalers, OTTs, and software as a service providers, ICT service providers, etc., who are benefiting from all of this better connectivity. So the other side of this is, of course, that the demographics in the region are changing. So, which means the population is aging more. There is definitely a bigger appetite for adoption of technology.
What do you think about that? Do you have your opinion about that? Like, you are more social, right?
Absolutely. I think if you think about the culture here in the Gulf, it does lend itself to sort of, more physical interactions, etc. But through technology, I think it just basically widens your options, etc. So people are now able to be better connected, because there's a lot of people who are working within Saudi Arabia, for example. Riyadh is one of the bigger business hubs, right? So you have people from across the regions who are in Riyadh during the week, and they travel typically over the weekends back to their families, or sometimes, on longer weekends, end of the month. So with all the technology becoming available, like I said, previously video calling, etc., was not allowed. So people were not able to have the same sort of interaction with their families remotely. Now that is changing, which is quite a positive. So people are now able to maybe, be more in touch in a better way with their families than they were previously able to.
I think it's fantastic to send the letters.
Well,
many years ago it was like that, right?
So would you prefer sending the letter or a video call, Agatha?
It very depends for who.
Well, okay. Your family, I think, always it's easier to talk to them. Like, I would have loved to have video in front of me, because I can't see you. I can't...
it's much easier to have a conversation and connect when we see each other.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. And especially if the air conditioning is working, it just makes it so much easier.
True.
So, Shabkhez, tell me, what are the implications on the services being provided and the talent supporting this journey?
Yeah, so when with the diversity that the telcos are trying to achieve, they're getting into many different areas of the ecosystem. As I said, they're getting into ICT services, they're getting into, more holistic services for their enterprise consumers. So that the type of talent they need is very, very different now, right? Mm-hmm. The GCC or Middle East generally has done okay in terms of grooming the sort of technology talent, the STEM graduates, etc., but it is still catching up. So it is not able to cope with the complete demand that such transformation needs, right? So what we see is that many of the telcos, they are able to source talent for many of the less experienced and less complicated roles from within the region. But when it comes to more specialization and more niche experiences, they're still relying on international talent together with fast-growing local talent. So that opportunity is definitely presents itself to sort of international consultant contractors who want to sort of support the region in terms of grooming the younger talent, grooming the less experienced talent. So we see, as Outwise, definitely we see an opportunity to bring in our contract freelancers and people on different projects to work with our clients to really, put that knowledge base in place, eventually have that right knowledge transfer and handover, grooming local talent with international expertise and
I just want
specialists.
I'm sorry, Shabkhez, that we are talking about freelancing. That's why I just want to ask you how the Middle East looks like on hiring freelance people.
So traditionally, there was a lot of emphasis on permanent workers, but the way the contracts were structured for even permanent workers was 2-year contracts, 3-year contracts. So they were kind of employees, but with fixed-term contracts. What has now changed is that, again, the Middle East, like the rest of the globe, realizes that you need different skills at different times and for different projects and different opportunities. So we are seeing that trend grow in the region with the telecoms, particularly as they work more and more on very specialized projects, whether it's for their enterprise customers or whether it is a transformation internally or helping a client transform externally. So they do need to bring in specific talent at specific points in time. So that's where they look at freelance talent or contract workers. The other thing which is also important to them is really grooming their own internal talent, because they are required to achieve certain levels of nationalization, and the business as usual tomorrow needs to be different from business as usual today as far as engaging national talent is concerned. So when you engage freelance consultants, of course, they come with that mindset of, getting a certain job done, going from A to Z and then handing over, as opposed to, let's say, hiring a consulting firm or hiring an external vendor who obviously want to keep that relationship going in the same way, because it's more, let's say, lucrative to maintain things as is, right? So that is where I see that the freelance opportunity is pretty massive to sort of really complement the talent needs as well as do the knowledge transfer.
No, that's great. That's why Middle East has Outwise.
Absolutely. So the other thing I would also want to just add very quickly, because I don't know if I covered that or not. Of course you can. The regulations that I mentioned, they are of course more favorable now compared to the other parts of the world for the telecom operators, but it is also changing very quickly, right? Because as an example, the more people are being allowed to have connectivity related sort of solutions, be it startups, be it ISPs, etc. But on the other hand, even telecoms are getting more opportunities now. Like for example, previously they were limited in terms of their participation in mobile financial services, in terms of the amount of transactions, etc. But recently we have seen telecom operators getting awarded, for example, in Saudi, STC has been awarded a digital banking license. So similarly, in other places, they're getting approvals for launching their own wallets and those sort of things.
Oh, that's nice.
So the mix of services is changing both ways. So in terms of other players penetrating their conventional space, as well as telecom operators being able to participate in other areas as well.
That's really nice. I think, Shabkhez, we are running with the time. I would like to tell you it was really, really nice to meet you.
I hope we can do this in person next time,
course.
Because it would be much more nicer.
We would love to do it again with you.
Thank you so much, Agatha.
Thank you so much,
Yeah,
Shabkhez.
it's really
Good
great,
speaking.
Shabkhez. Thank you.
You were very interested.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Take care.
Thanks for tuning in to Outwise Insights. If you want to hire freelancers or find your next project, head over to outwise.com. See you next time.
Bye.
Thanks, man.